In this video, we're going to cover some of the types of sportswear that have been worn in the late 19th and early 20th century. We'll look at a bustle era tennis outfit, an 1890 cycling costume, a roller skating and a golf outfit, both from the early 1900s, and even some modern sportswear, which we'll compare to those historical garments. I am a great lover of all things elegant and glitzy. Silk ball gowns, expensive walking suits, elaborate tea gowns, so good. But sportswear is special in that it shows us what it was like not just to lounge or dance or walk in historical garments, but also what it was like to run or skate or pedal or swing a racket or a golf club. It's fascinating to see the way that clothing was adapted and sometimes very much not adapted for functionality. An important caveat before we get started, these activities were mostly enjoyed by the middle and upper classes. Working class people often didn't have the time or the money to participate in many of these activities, so if you're looking at some of these outfits and thinking to yourself, that does not seem like something an ordinary person would wear, you are correct. Pretty much all of these outfits are things that you'd be seeing more in the middle and upper classes. This is an 1880s tennis dress. Tennis is a simple game, so it has been around in one form or another for centuries. In fact, when they were redoing the roof of Westminster Abbey, they found a couple of tennis balls in the rafters that dated back literally to like the 15th century. And these early tennis balls were made of leather and stuffed with dog fur. Because it's so simple, it's not surprising that it has been popular for so long. It actually experienced a big surge of popularity in the 1880s, due in no small part to innovations in how tennis balls were made. Charles Goodyear and his process for vulcanized rubber was employed to make tennis balls much bouncier than they had been before. Before this, croquet was really popular in the 1860s, which meant that smooth, grassy lawns were already in place, and the transition to lawn tennis from croquet was a pretty simple one. They even sold these little kits that had rackets and balls and a net and everything else that you needed to play tennis. Because tennis was mostly enjoyed by the middle and upper classes, fashion still played a pretty big part. So very few concessions were made for comfort and mobility. Women still wore the fashionable bustle, a corset, petticoats, and all the other things that contributed to the fashionable silhouette of the day. They did make a few changes for mobility, however. Skirts were a little bit shorter and tended to hit around the ankle, and vertical pleats were really popular because it allowed the skirt to expand while you were like chasing a ball across the court. As the 1880s were drawing to a close, an incredible innovation in how bicycles were constructed led to the invention of the safety bicycle. A safety bicycle is what we would just call a bicycle. Essentially, pre-safety bicycle, we had what we would probably call a penny farthing. The crank for the pedals is attached directly to the big wheel in the front, so it goes very fast. They're also very high off the ground, and you're also quite top heavy. When you introduce uneven terrain into the mix, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to see how dangerous that they could be. The safety bicycle introduced two evenly sized wheels and a bike chain connecting the two. And let me tell you, when the safety bicycle was invented, I don't think anyone could have predicted the seismic impact that it would have on the lives of women. I could literally talk about this all day. The bike is unironically one of the greatest feminist inventions of all time. It was Susan B. Anthony who said, "Let me tell you what I think of bicycling. I think it has done more to emancipate women than anything else in the world. It gives women a sense of freedom and self-reliance. I stand and rejoice every time I see a woman ride by on a wheel. The picture of free, untrammeled womanhood." Ugh. Ugh. The women's rights movement was already well underway in the 1890s, and the bicycle introduced both freedom of movement and freedom of dress. Consider just the fact that a woman could now freely move about the city compared to the expense of a horse, a carriage, servants to maintain them. A bicycle was so much more accessible. Okay, but this is a fashion channel, so let's focus on how the bicycle impacted dress. The rational dress movement was already gaining momentum, but it was the bicycle craze that sealed the deal. It was just not possible to go cycling in heavy skirts and petticoats and stiff corsets. Thus, you get the bicycle suit. On the bottom, you had either a pair of bloomers or a divided skirt, which gave the illusion of being a skirt, but could be unbuttoned down front and had two separate legs for modesty. Warmth was definitely a concern, so a little jacket or a sweater was common for the top. I want to thank Halara for sponsoring this video. The historical outfits in this video are beautiful, but they can be a little bit cumbersome to our modern sensibilities. Halara sent me some of their favorite pieces, and I really love the fact that it combines style and comfort and practicality. Much though I love historical sportswear, some of it is just not very practical, especially for modern people. The Halara pieces are super comfy, and as someone who knows exactly how historical sportswear feels, I think I have an especially strong appreciation for just how easy the Halara outfits are. One thing I absolutely love about Halara is the simple one-piece outfits. I feel like I look so cute in this, and I don't need to hunt down half a dozen pieces to put my outfit together the way that a woman in the past would have had to do. For a woman to actually be properly dressed for, say, roller skating in 1900, she would have needed to hunt down at least 10 different pieces: a bodice, a skirt, a corset, petticoat, drawers. Don't get me wrong, historical sportswear is gorgeous, but it really just can't compare to the modern stuff, which is both super easy to wear and really cute. I really love that Halara has taken the aspects of historical sportswear that were actually really convenient, like for example the bloomers that would have protected a woman's modesty, and adapted them for actual modern women. I love Halara's signature design, which is these undershorts, which takes a lot of the worry out of wearing sportswear for me. I feel like I can work out or lounge around in the grass without having to think twice about what I'm wearing. And also the fact that the shorts are built in means I don't have to hunt down any matching pieces, and not to mention they have pockets. I usually just keep my gym key card in there, and it's just enough space for essentials without being bulky. It also feels nice and secure. I'm not worried about my phone falling out of my pocket while I'm on the treadmill. So thank you again to Halara for sponsoring this video. When they reached out, I was immediately inspired to do this video about sportswear. It felt like the perfect opportunity to show off some of my favorite modern and historical pieces of sportswear. If golf is to be fashionably played, it of course must be fashionably dressed. Golf originally comes from Scotland and dates back to the 1500s. 500 years later, in the early 1900s, you can still see the Scottish influence in fashionable golfing outfits. Plaids, tweeds, checked patterns, they all call back to the Scottish heritage of golf. Also, the tam, or the tam-o'-shanter cap, was a popular accessory for the sport. Mix and match separates are one of the hallmarks of modern sportswear, and you can actually see the beginnings of that trend at the turn of the century. A lot of the outfits that I featured in this video are very neat, tidy little sets that seem as if they can only be worn as a set. And while it was very typical throughout the 19th century for matching sets to be the norm, the new woman in the 1890s needed a new wardrobe. This sweater from earlier in the video was paired with a split skirt for cycling, but when the split skirt is swapped for a tweed skirt and a matching golf cap, it can serve more than one purpose. So when these separates were introduced, women's clothing suddenly became much more flexible, both literally and figuratively. That mix and match aspect of modern clothing allowed a woman to get a lot more use out of her wardrobe. But the clothes themselves were also much less rigid. Knitwear had a big boom in popularity around this time because it allowed a much greater range of motion. The original roller skates came onto the scene in the most dramatic way possible. In the mid-18th century, they were invented by a man named, I'm not kidding, Merlin. In their original form, they lacked a few key features that were fairly necessary, including brakes and the ability to turn. He decided to introduce his invention to the world by skating through a masquerade party while playing the violin. And ultimately, he crashed into a mirror and sustained pretty severe injuries. It wasn't really until the 1860s or 70s with the invention of quad skates that they caught on as anything other than like a party entertainment. It was actually promoted by people trying to sell roller skates as a proper activity for young people. They also weren't wrong. Young men and women could skate together and have like an actual conversation with a little bit of privacy while still being chaperoned. Fashions for skating weren't super specialized necessarily. Ladies' magazines and fashion guides of the day recommended a simple walking outfit with hems that were high enough so that you wouldn't trip on them or get them caught in your wheels. They also recommended avoiding lots of fussy details like ruffles and bows and stuff like that. So instead, braidwork and buttons were seen as the most popular way to decorate sporting outfits for the rink. Sea bathing was seen as a healthy occupation for women for centuries, but it was initially only the very wealthy that had access to it. Taking a trip to the seaside was expensive and time-consuming and far outside the reach of working class people and even the middle classes as well. It was actually really the railroad that brought the seaside into the reach of ordinary people. When railroad tickets got cheap enough and labor laws started to be enacted that limited the amount of time that could be demanded from average workers, the everyday person had access to both transportation and the time to enjoy it. Interestingly enough, the bathing costume was really not something that was worn on the actual beach. In order to maintain standards of propriety, women would enter into this little thing on the beach called a bathing machine, where they would change into their bathing costume, and then a horse or a donkey would drag the whole thing into the ocean, and then she could descend this little set of steps down into the water where she could finally enjoy the sea. When you see old photographs taken on the beach, most of the people enjoying the sun and the sand are actually wearing just full summer outfits. I included a bathing costume in this video about sportswear, but there really wasn't much sport about it. It wasn't until about the 1920s or so, when bathing costumes became much more streamlined, that swimming really became more of an actual sporting activity. I have actually been in the water in a bathing costume, and let me tell you, they are no fun to wear. They feel just so gross and soggy, and it just goes against every one of your instincts to get into the water with your clothes on. This video honestly is a really limited view of sportswear. There were dozens of sports and outfits that I wasn't able to cover, things like archery and horseback riding, calisthenics, and even baseball. Seeing how different threads of history are connected and how they led to more and more freedom for women is kind of fascinating. Tennis would never have been possible without the lawns that were left over from croquet, because croquet was seen as an appropriate activity for upper class young ladies that wasn't too strenuous. Tennis really benefited from an association with croquet. As women started to play tennis and they were able to observe that there were no negative side effects for women's health, more and more sporting activities became acceptable for women to participate in. That is not to say that there wasn't a lot of resistance to some of these activities. Cycling in particular received a lot of pushback, which is probably more to do with the women's rights movement than the actual activity itself. Despite all the pushback that they got, women persevered, and now I get to benefit from that and participate in whatever sports I want. The next video in the sportswear series will be taking these outfits out and putting them to use. I love collecting historical fashion pieces, but I'd also like to know what it would really have been like to wear some of these outfits while doing the activity that they're intended for. So if you would like to see part 2 of my sportswear series, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.